You are listening to and watching for the first time ever the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. Thanks so much for tuning in. Yes, if you're listening to the podcast, I do have a video version of this episode available on YouTube. Just search my name, Andrew Mackay-Smith, or Scars and Guitars. It should come up. Now, the interview subject I've got prepared for you. It's a good one, another great one. Gosh, I love talking to guys like Kimmo Kuusniemi because he is an independent filmmaker. He's been doing it for a long time. And the reason for the chat is he's got 2 films in market at the moment. They're both road movies or rockumentaries focusing on Korpiklaani's tour of Japan and Russia. So they're separate films. One's called Live in Japan and the other one's called Made in Russia. I truly enjoyed them, so I reached back out to his publicist and said, how about it? Let's have a chat. And here it is. But we also talk about a lot of other stuff because he's a smart guy and I love going there with a smart guy like Kimmo. Matter of fact, the conversation could have gone on a lot longer, but I had to get to bed because it was past midnight or approaching midnight and I was just buggered, I think, and I didn't want to nod my way through a conversation with someone as smart as Kimmo. So here he is, Kimmo Kuusniemi, the independent filmmaker from Split Screen Films. Look, the first thing I want to do is congratulate you on even doing these 2, okay? Because I know it's not easy. I do a bit of filmmaking myself, but you've done it in foreign countries, Russia and Japan, and I can't imagine the logistics involved. And the first thing that comes to mind is all of this footage that you took has to be stored somewhere. So did you use one of these, or was it going up to the cloud via the internet?
I had a couple of hard drives, so basically I was storing everything into 2 different hard drives just in case something goes wrong. So yes, hard drives. And the cameras that I was using was iPhones.
Was there any moments though, because both of those countries aren't exactly the most sunny climate of the most sunny climates, where you had a bit of a scare and something might have happened to both of those storage devices? Because I can't imagine losing all of that footage that you took, tens of, maybe even hundreds of hours of footage that you've taken to condense down into 31 minutes and 39 minutes respectively.
Well, there actually was, because we were constantly on the road. So we were kind of on trains and planes and automobiles. And there was one train trip that because of course, like as a filmmaker, you first thing you check is everything related to your equipment that it's with you. You might forget something else, but for some reason I left the hard drives in the train. And luckily, the kind of light guy from Korpiklaani, he picked them up and he asked me that, are you missing something? And I was, no. Are you sure that you're not missing anything? And he saw the hard drives. And after that, the joke was that I owed him vodka all the time. So that was the kind of like that I owed him big time. And I did in a way, yes.
Oh, well, at least you got them back. But look, to that point, though, you took tens, maybe even, as I say, hundreds of hours of footage for 2 documentaries or rockumentaries, as Hollywood might call it. And are they released yet? Are they there for anybody to watch at the moment?
Yeah, they are on the VOD, on the Vimeo. So basically you can watch them, cost like €4 to watch.
Yeah.
Because that was the kind of, because this took quite a long time, because that was 2016, they made in Russia. And back then the DVD was still like an option. But DVD is not the option anymore. Nobody is interested in DVD. So unfortunately the big problem with this type of films is that where do you release it? How do you gonna get any money out of it? Because if you are lucky, you get enough on the crowdfunding. But in this case, the crowdfunding went seriously weird, considering that Korpiklaani is a fairly big band, and they have, at that point, they had 600,000 Facebook followers, and we did quite extensive, like, commercials and all kind of funny videos to kind of raise the interest and get the money, and yet we got like, I don't know, maybe 1/10 of the money that I hoped to really get, and that was kind of the first problem after we got back, that what to do. But yeah, So in a way, like, nowadays you don't like, because I've done a lot of TV series and stuff like that. For that, I have an international TV distribution company that basically distributes everything. They would distribute these, but of course, the TV stations are not interested in anything else than Metallica or Iron Maiden. If you don't have them in the documentary, there's no chance really to sell them. So it is quite complicated, and of course, without the Russia, I wouldn't got into this, because the Russia was so exciting that I wouldn't resist the kind of like the temptation to go without money. Because that's one of the rules of the filmmaking, that you should never take part in films that don't have money, because that's fine when you start your career, then you do all kind of stuff, and of course later you do things that you feel that is good for you, you might kind of go, but as a professional you shouldn't really kind of do things that don't have a budget. But in this, the Russia and the Siberia was so interesting that that it kind of the rules went out of the window.
I feel for you, mate. I truly do, because I can, as I say, I know how much effort you've put into this, because I know how much effort it takes. I've just spent 10 to 12 hours today just putting together something which goes for 20 minutes or 25 minutes or so. But it takes that long when you start using. Did you use Premiere Pro? Did you use Premiere Pro, or what program did you use?
No, I use Final Cut Pro.
Final Cut Pro, yeah. But the point is, you've gone to so much effort here, and I understand exactly where you're coming from. You've got a tenth of the viewership that you might have hoped for. And yet Metal Hammer, and I think it was Metal Hammer or Metal Injection, one of those two Facebook pages the other day, I've actually put it on my Instagram page. The post was, and it was a Metallica post, all their album openers ranked from worst to best. Like, is that where we're at? That people are so, I'll say it, stupid, excuse me, but they are that interested in that kind of content. I don't blame Metal Hammer, by the way. But the average person thinks that that's engaging content. And sure enough, there was, 600, I don't want to make up what the number is, but there was rather a lot of interactions and engagement via likes and maybe dislikes and comments and the like. And I actually put it on my Instagram pages and said, is this engaging content? Is this what people want to see? Because I don't put that sort of stuff up. I put up people like yourself, people like you that are actually contributing to culture and to society. And we can't change it, but we've just sort of got to work within the parameters that are there. But for you mentioned that there's been a lot of promotion through Korpiklaani's Facebook page and the like. When you were putting up the ads for the video, did you get a lot of interactions that way?
Well, the kind of thing is that because it's been tracking for a long time, and it hasn't been easy. Korpiklaani's manager, because he hasn't been really in this, so that has been slightly affecting everything. Okay. And for example, now that they are released, I don't think they have actually yet advertised it, and because they had their Saturday, they had their live streaming because they had their vodka released, and so that somehow this wasn't kind of okay to be advertising at the same time. So I don't know what they are doing. So it's a bit one of these weird things that we are slightly kind of, it has become my thing, although it's about Korpiklaani. So they are not that much. The violin player has been all along. Tuomas has been with me in this, and that was one of the great things in that I got to know him. We have very similar interests, and we have been making some music together already, and we have another film project that we are going to work together on. So that's been one of these great things that has happened, like, in everything that's good and bad.
You're right about Thomas Runakari. I've spoken to him once as well for my podcast series.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Nice guy. Just before they came down to Australia. Yeah, I think it was either due to, they actually toured here. They actually came here, I think 2 years ago, might have been, or Kulkiga. when Kokia came out, I might have had a conversation for him, one of the two there, but he really impressed me when I had that conversation because I hadn't heard of the band before, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But great band overall. But mate, I've got to say, it surprises the hell out of me that the band and the management aren't behind you on this one here in terms of sharing it on their socials, because I can tell from my experience, not to make too fine a point about it, but if I don't expect the artist, because I interview, people like Thomas and all of the great European and North American hard rock and heavy metal superstars and the like, and if they don't share it on their Facebook page, mate, it doesn't really go anywhere. As soon as they do, though, sometimes tens of thousands of listeners to a podcast episode. It's incredible what can happen. So, yeah, I mean, can you do anything to change that in the short term? Because that's a shame.
Well,
I think these need to be seen.
It is kind of, they do what they do. That's what I've been saying. That because for me, the films are done and there's new things to be done, and it has been financially very kind of like a hard thing, but they are done, so they're kind of paid. So whatever suffering there was in the past, it's in the past, and happens. And yes, I'm quite sure that they will do something. But like I said, I don't know how much in Korpiklaani's case it will actually affect the kind of like, the viewings and everything, because like the crowdfunding went so terribly weird. And I think that it's something to do, because there's a friend of mine who ran the kind of like, the biggest merchandise company in Helsinki, the Helsinki shop. And he had to close a few years back, and he would be kind of like, why? That you're kind of the biggest one. And he said that the problem is that there aren't fans anymore. That there are people who use your music, they listen to it and in whatever occasion, but they are not real fans anymore. They are not. When I was a kid, there was one band and you followed it, and even if they made a bad album, you were listening to it and you tried to kind of make excuses that it wasn't a bad album because you were their fan to the end. And this is kind of that now we like the merchandise sells when you are kicking, but nobody buys it like when they are home from online. So that's kind of like quite dramatic change. And of course, like Korpiklaani is a great band on stage. And that's where their success is, that it is the tours are really good. They get the audience in, and it's kind of like a party. So it's kind of like a party band that you're going to listen to vodka and have some vodka. So I don't know if they have type of like, of course they have, but how big the actual fan base is, like the people who are diehard. So that's it kind of like, because the result of the crowdfunding was so surprising that you have bands that are much smaller, and the guys have been managed to get much more money. So this is one of these, because I haven't done crowdfunding before this, so that was quite interesting. That you shouldn't believe the numbers, because it's so easy to go with the kind of like big numbers and think that, oh, you get like even 2% of this, it will be, but it doesn't work that way, because you don't know how true the numbers are. And what I know is that the follower of Korpiklaani is totally organic. They haven't been kind of buying people. It's just people who have been in the gigs, and then they come home and they like them and see what they are doing. So it's kind of like, I think that was very interesting from the kind of new, because the crowd was very good, because the people who did support the film, they were really, really supporting. And I think that they, in a way, when I felt like, that this is kind of like too much, they were the ones who kept me going, because they actually were full on behind it. And usually, like, if you make like music, it's quite lonely, because until you get it out, you are just alone doing it, and you might show it to somebody in the family or whatever, but you don't have any kind of, that type of like, slap in the back that is great stuff, but the funders actually do that. And you kind of become, in a bizarre way, they become kind of like your friends, some of them. And the weirdest thing was that when the Japan was done, because there was only like, there wasn't any money to actually finish it. There was just money to go and film it. And then when I tried to figure out what to do with that, there was part of the Russian crowdfunders that started to send me money through PayPal
Okay.
to be able to work on it. Because of course, like with the film thing, that the problem is that of course I have commercial work and all this and other things, but if you are working like this type of stuff, you cannot work on several things at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It will never get done. You have to kind of
Yes.
be focusing on one thing and just finish it. And of course, I had to take a break and like with the Russia, because I edited the first version, which was kind of like a loose version, which was like, 2 hours and almost 3 hours long. And then uh, Sophia, who is a young editor, very good
Mm-hmm.
editor, she kind of like was interested in having a co-edit, and she spent again like I don't know months editing it, and she ended editing it into 2 hours and 47 minutes because it kind of worked even that, but it's a bit kind of like how do you put it out if it's that long? So then, as the final thing, when the COVID came, I suddenly had more time. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought that, well, I shortened it now, like, just the kind of best things. And so then when it became 30, but of course, there's a lot of stuff. I might sometimes think about it that if I put the actual extended version out, but, but so she kind of, Sophia came to kind of rescue the whole thing in a
Mm-hmm.
way that I had to stop because I had run out of money. So I had to kind of go work in the commercial side to kind of get my balance back to kind of get again into it. So, but it's like filmmaking is like that. It's like it's a weird thing. You can. There's always things go always wrong. That's the kind of main thing. And then in this, it went kind of wrong in a way that I couldn't expect because you've been doing film so long time that I think that I know all the holes and things that you can kind of fall into. But this was kind of like a new type of weirdness. So, which I like because that's kind of it never gets dull. It's always kind of like keeping you on your toes and making you think what to do, how to solve this, and I think that that's kind of gives me pleasure that they are finished, they are done. I didn't quit. I'm whereas my kind of like business partners were all saying that I'm an idiot that I should stop like 3 years ago. But it's kind of like I don't know. It's either it is being an idiot or just kind of like try to finish what you started.
Again, sorry, I said it once before, but I feel for you, mate. I can see what you've done here, and I think you've achieved a hell of a lot. I just people, to your point, they are so used to getting things for free at the moment. We have almost every video, every film ever made available for free on some streaming platform somewhere. If you've got an IP address, you've got an IP router or what have you, and you can hack into another country's. There's different territories that films are released. You know what I'm trying to say there. I just
Yeah.
think we've arrived at a point in time, for example, where me and my podcast, where I've got, I think there's almost 500 episodes posted. As I say, I've done almost 600 interviews, and the vast majority of which have been curated for the podcast. Thousands of hours, as you well know, it takes to do this sort of stuff. And I'm not saying I deserve
Mm.
any special praise or recognition. Believe me, I get plenty of very positive feedback. Some from your part of the world there in Finland. I can see a lot of
Mm.
people listening from up there. And I love doing it because I love talking to people such as yourself and the other artists.
Mm.
But it would just be nice for a change to be able to, because I've thought long and hard about this, to be able to say to my audience, look, I've been doing this for nothing for 3 years now, 3.5 years, as a matter of fact. I'll do a Patreon thing or a Kickstarter or whatever insert crowdfunding
Mm.
campaign here and wait and see. But I've got to be honest with you, for the reasons that you've just outlined, I'm nervous about doing that because I have a feeling I won't get anybody that contributes anything. And I just didn't want to be basically humiliated in that way. And
Mm.
I'm putting together movies, as I say now, for people and doing things that I'm not asking for any money for it because I'm just starting out as well. I've just
Yeah.
graduated from university where I've learned how to do a lot of this sort of stuff. But the bottom line is, and I'll summarize my point here is that as creators, we are up against it, mate. We are truly up against it. And I think for people listening and on YouTube, for people watching, granted, you're getting this content for nothing, and neither of us are saying you need to pay us for watching this specific content here, but I make a point, and it really is what it is, I donate maybe up to $50 a month to various creators, most of which are on on regular monthly payments, most of which I don't even keep up with. I just do it because I want them to know that somebody cares and that somebody out there may well be listening to them and the like. So, mate, it's a very interesting dilemma that we are in. But I know here in Australia, the federal government have gone to great lengths, and I've got to applaud them big time for this. They're going after bloody, those bastards at Facebook and Google, YouTube.
Yeah.
And they're going after them saying, you are appropriating creators' content and you're making more money than anybody in the history of mankind's ever made it. Time to give some back, pay up. And they've got their campaigns at the moment where when you click on Google here in Australia, it talks about why this is a bad idea and why your freedom of expression is at risk and all this bullshit. And it's not about that at all. It's about making sure that if someone clicks on your two great videos here, outstanding documentaries that you've got here, you might only get something in the vicinity of $1,500 a year out of it, or whatever the Finnish monetary equivalent is. But at least you get something. At least it might be a couple of bottles of vodka or a nice dinner out somewhere between you and your family and your wife. You know what I'm saying?
But I think it's a bit kind of like, because I always, most people don't understand what I do, but if they kind of like listen to what I'm doing and some of the craziness of it, because I think that it's like I started as a musician, and then it was natural to make films because film business is more like a real work that you actually can get money out. So and it has been, I've been 40 years making films, so I have been able to stick to it, and I cannot complain. So I've been lucky or whatever, but it's kind of like, it doesn't matter how successful you are. Like I have a friend who I work with, and he does the big kind of like big things in London, and we did them for a while together, but I kind of drifted away because I didn't like it, because it was like working in a factory. The money was good, but it wasn't like, there wasn't anything me in them. It was just kind of like being a technician. So I didn't like it, and he kind of likes it, and it's been good for him. So he has to, but it's still, in the end of the day, it's not the money why you do this. This is actually something that is a kind of like a calling, and the money, just because you need money, you cannot live in the modern world without money. So in that way, it's kind of, because like I started with a 35mm film and 16mm film, and it was bloody complicated because to make anything, it cost arm and leg, because film was really expensive. The laboratories were very expensive. So in a way, becoming a filmmaker back then was a lot more complicated than now, because now you have an iPhone, you have a MacBook, and you are a filmmaker. And you can do stunning things. There's nothing stopping you making like a feature film. So in a way, I think that there's been different complicated things in the past, and there was a much higher threshold to become a filmmaker, because you actually had to understand quite a lot of, because with film camera you have to know what you are doing, you have to know the lighting, you have to know everything, because you cannot preview it. It's just kind of like, you film something, and a couple of days later you see the rushes and you see if it was okay. So in a way, like, I'm trying to say that I think that it's always been a struggle. And I was doing the film, then came the video, then suddenly you had all these kind of millions of people who could kind of play the rec button, press the rec button and aim it that way, and they became filmmakers. So there's been all the time challenges. in a way that like now we talk about the COVID, that it screwed up everything, and it actually changed quite a lot of things that I was kind of preparing to do. But it's nothing new in a way, because I've been going through all these different technical revolutions in film, and then you adapt. And in a way, I think that yes, it is more complicated in where to get the money now, but it's still about the adaptation, that you have to just try to figure out what can you do, because there's now much more options what you can do. So in a way, it's kind of bleak, but I don't think that it's bleaker than it's been before. There's been different type of problems. So in a way, like, now this VOD that you can, with a Vimeo, you can just have your own TV channel. So of course that's not easy to start it, but at least you can have it, and then you can start to kind of, if you can create interesting content, you can start to get money in, and you don't have a hell of a lot of money coming in to just make the living. So in a way, I think that yes, it would be nice if people would be appreciating people who make things, and in a way they do, because if we would take away the music and films and everything, world would be quite bleak. And unfortunately, somehow people have managed to kind of got the idea that they don't need to pay, and they maybe think that they are paying it for, if they pay Apple or Spotify or something, a $10 a month to have everything. But of course, it turns out to be kind of like you have to have 1 million hits, and then you get like $100, and so it doesn't compute. So there is a problem with the, how to even it. And of course, the problem is that the people who are successful, they make all the money, because that's where it ends. So it is the kind of little people that suffer. So yeah. But what I'm just trying to say maybe is that it is kind of bleak, but if you try to use your brain, there is ways of doing things and getting over it. And not everybody makes it, but that was how it was in the past. In the 80s, when it was film, it was even less people who could actually become a filmmaker. So I don't know.
I think you've made some extraordinarily good points there. I haven't gone this deep into the creator's dilemma with anybody before, so thank you for doing that. And let's talk about both of the videos, though, both of the documentaries, though. So you've got Live in Japan, which is 31 minutes and 22 seconds of just great stuff, you and Korpiklani over there. And then there's the one in Russia, which I can't separate them, to be honest with you. I like them both equally. The Russian documentary lasts for almost 40 minutes, or 39 minutes and 22 seconds. So there's, for people out there listening, if you're wondering if you're going to get value for money, you will get value for money with these two, because they are very beautifully put together. And that's the key thing. You've really thought about the cinematography aspect. I like the swivel motion that you've got on there. At first, I thought it was a bit vertigo-inducing, but then I got used to it, and I like the way that you do it. I came to sort of look forward to those times when you started to introduce it. But just around the point that we more or less started talking about, you do tour with the band Korpiklani, and I have spoken to Thomas before from the band, the violin player, as I mentioned, and I like that you have a great rapport with him, and indeed with the rest of the band too, certainly on the road. And I love the way that you showcase the rawness of life on the road, because I think a lot of fans, they probably think that there's a cliche of sex, drugs and rock and roll. It's not. It's pretty bloody far from that. You're basically living your life as a athlete in some ways, trying to not get sick, but it's impossible to not get sick when you're traveling, because it's just the nature of touring, isn't it? But apart from being incredibly rewarding for you, as you've just outlined, but also when you're touring and traveling with the band, probably being very tiring and draining as well. You're a filmmaker, so you can make a film on just about any subject you choose. Why choose these two? Why choose the subject matter across both countries?
Well, it all started with the Maiden Russia, and then, because I did 2008, I did The Promised Land of Heavy Metal, which was the documentary about Finnish metal scene. I don't know if you've seen it. And
I'm just gonna write it down now. What's it called? Sorry,
Promised Land of Heavy Metal.
Is it in? Has it got English subtitles?
It's in English.
Oh, it's in
No,
English.
no,
Okay,
it's
there
in
you go.
English.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's been several different DVD releases and stuff. It was actually fairly big at the time. There was an iPhone app that had the whole documentary, and
Oh,
that was the first
I should
iPhone
know it.
app
My
with the.
apologies then. Yeah, no, it sounds
No,
great. Yeah.
it's fine. But yeah, so when I was doing that, because that was quite weird, because uh, like any TV channel in the world, metal is not something that I want to do anything about, unless it's Iron Maiden or something. And but Sakari Heiskanen, he was the head of Finnish entertainment, and he actually kind of now works with me. After that, we've kind of been friends, working partners, and but then he had the idea that we need to make this metal film, and he thought that because I'm the kind of like the godfather of the Finnish metal, because I had the first Finnish metal band ever, so I was the right person to kind of do it, and
Nice.
because I've been living here in England for 24 years, so I've been out of Finland. I haven't been really following anything, and that was just after Lordi won the Eurovision Song Contest. So
Yeah.
that's when the metal was in Finland. It was everywhere, and it was really crazy because there's even the Finnish church had metal masses, which was for me was well, it wasn't right. It's kind of wrong. Metal and church shouldn't really mix, but it was kind of and with that I had good access to all the bands, and that's how I got to know Korpiklaani, because they
Mhm.
were in Tuska Festival, which is a big festival in Helsinki, and they were they were supposed to play there, but their instruments were somewhere in Germany, so they were just getting drunk, and so I had this really nice drunken interview with them, and how we kind of started keeping in contact with Jon. And I kind of like, because I after the Promised Land of Heavy Metal, I had the idea that it would be nice to make kind of like a sequel to it, and so I've been kind of collecting interviews and stuff, so I've been meeting Jonne in different occasions, few times, and then that was 2016 summer. We were again like doing kind of like what's been happening, kind of catch up interview. And then Jonne said that, what about if you make a documentary about Korpiklaani? And I said, yeah, it's possible. And then I got home, and then I started to kind of look what they are doing, and I saw the Russian tour, and I saw that it was really extensive tour, that it was through the whole Russia, Siberia to Vladivostok, which is in the kind of like, next stop is Japan.
Mhm.
So I thought that this is like something, special. So that's how I got into it. And then there was the kind of next thing, that how the money, can the record label put money into it? No, they couldn't. And then it was the crowdfunding, and the band didn't want to do a crowdfunding, so I decided to do it myself. So, and take the the complete risk of it. And and it was just because I saw that the whole thing going to Russia is so exciting.
Mm.
And of course, it was also quite challenging, because I knew that I cannot go with normal cameras, because there's no time, and I have to carry everything.
For
There
sure.
isn't any,
Yeah.
and I had to also film while carrying everything. So then at that point, the iPhones already had become like, wow, this is really good quality that you get out of them. That they are better than 10 years ago the £100,000 professional cameras.
Yes, they are.
So
Yeah.
see, that's the kind of like, and I love technology, so so for me it's not the problem to kind of ditch this size of big camera and take the iPhone, and then like getting gimbal that is rock solid, and you can put it on a stick, and then you can have suddenly a flying camera that doesn't bother anybody, but you can have it in the singer's face like this, and it's just kind of like a selfie stick. So all these things kind of like, it was in a way, going there with this equipment was quite a risk, because I haven't been relying on this ever. So it was kind of like, it could have gone wrong, but it actually, I think that what makes the film great is that there's a lot of stuff that you couldn't get with the normal camera kit. That there just shots that are impossible to do with any other way. So and there was like what was one of the things that really was great was that I did some Facebook live streaming, and I used the gimbal. It wasn't that type of like you see a lot of these kind of put a camera somewhere and then it's for people walking around and that's. But I was actually doing like kind of complicated, like the camera flying in amongst the band and into the audience type of things, and it was fantastic feeling when you saw the kind of like the whole screen was almost full of likes and love and the Facebook symbols.
Yeah.
And that was something that I haven't experienced before with the long time of filmmaking. That was like I was actually connected to the audience and they were reacting to what I do. So I could see that they like what I do, kind of like and that was one thing that took. In Japan, I was trying to kind of expand that. So that's kind of like, I kind of talk a lot, so I kind of got into a tangent in the
No, that's
story.
fine. I don't mind at all.
Yeah.
I think what you've done here is marvelous, as I've said a few times already again. But talk as much as you want about anything you like. Believe me, I've got that forum for you, so no worries. But I will ask you this question though: is that what did you feel were the most interesting aspects of each of the films?
Well, I think Russia was the most, because Finland has the longest border with Russia in Europe, so we have had a bit kind of like complicated relationship with them, and with the wars and everything. So sure. I have been before, like in Soviet Union, but I haven't been in Russia, and I always said that I never go to Russia except if I have to work there. And it's just kind of like silly thing. It doesn't mean anything, but that type of kind of like.
I do, yeah.
Long time ago when you are younger, yeah, and so I, in a weird way, I kind of had the completely wrong idea of Russia. Like I think a lot of us have completely. Like I think the media is part of it. They don't really kind of. We don't see positive news. We see all kind of bad news at how everything is falling apart. But when you are in Siberia, people were so fantastically lovely, and instead of like if you are kind of like filming in New York, you are kind of worried about yourself, and you are aware of your surroundings that something could go wrong. But in Siberia, where you might be the only Westerner inside, there's no threat. It was just really, really nice. Peaceful, calm, and where we kind of expecting that Russia is falling apart because of this and that and whatever, couldn't see it. It's like one thing that we were worried about was like flying with the kind of like the Russian planes,
the domestic
in the
flights,
country, because they keep on dropping all the time from the skies. But Tuomas told me that I think it was 2010 that Putin said that enough of this. I think they lost the kind of like the Russian choir or something, one accident. And Putin said that this has to stop now. That they have to get new planes. So all the internal planes were brand new. They were actually better than when I was flying with the British Airways. So have you heard about that? No.
I haven't heard about it, but I agree with you that Russia cops a raw deal because of what's going on in the United States and the way Russia and Russians in general are being demonized by one side of politics over there. And it's just garbage because my wife and I, my family, we've traveled a lot. We've met Russians in the Philippines and my kids have played with Russian kids who couldn't speak English or had very limited grasp of English. No worries. Great kids. Just like Australian kids or Finnish kids, I imagine, so there's this whole thing that the media has othered Russia. That's them. They're these people who meddle and interfere in elections. which I think is bullshit, by the way, because I've done a lot of research on it, like independent research, by the way. I'm not swayed either way. I just wanted to get some understanding. As I say, I'm a journalist. I had to do some essays and investigations on it whilst I was at uni, and yeah, it's crazy. There's this perception that Russia is something, but you got to talk to someone like yourself who's been there and can tell you firsthand that it's actually quite a nice place to be.
And it is, you of course always have to kind of keep the people and the politics. That it's kind of like, I think what I've always liked in my job is that when you do commercial stuff, and here in UK I've been working for some very big companies, and they send you here and there, and I've been in Johannesburg when people said that it's crazy, you will be killed there, and no, I wasn't, and it was absolutely safe. I asked the guy that, can I rent a car and drive around? He said yes, just don't go into this neighborhood and that neighborhood, then it's fine. And it was, and it's just kind of like, what I love in filmmaking is that you actually are working with real people in different countries, and that's the best way to kind of like understand people. And I think that everybody should kind of have that type of experience, then we would have much less racism and all these ugly things, because you would just realize that people are exactly the same. Doesn't matter what their religion is and how they look like, they have exactly the same. They want their kids to be kind of like, school, then they want them to success and other things. So that's kind of like why the Russia was probably one of the best experiences of filming trips to me ever. And I've been in a lot of places. It is kind of like, Japan is something that I've always wanted to go to, and I work here for big insurance company called Direct Line. You probably have it in Australia also. And
I think so.
They were expanding to Japan, and they hired me to make a film Japanese market that would make them kind of like excited about it. And we made like kind of like a spoof Mission Impossible film, and I was hoping that I could get with that film to Japan to show it, but unfortunately the Japanese bosses flew in. I wasn't able to go there. So this was kind of, again, like I really was looking forward to get there. And like in the film, Tuomas is talking about the similarities and things in the kind of Japanese culture. There's very strange connections to Finnish, like, the being silent. We don't need to, well, I'm not a good example of a Finn because I talk all the time, but I can also be quiet without talking. So it's not like here, if you are 5 minutes in quiet, somebody has to start to say something. But in Finland, you can kind of sit long time without nobody getting kind of like feeling a little bit like what's happening. We have to say something. So that was, Japan was like, it was very different experience. And Japan is quite interesting in the kind of, there's the spiritual side of it, which is very strong. And then yet they are the technology and the industrial side of it is very kind of like presence everywhere, but it's this kind of weird things. And we went there that long, but I plan to go again soon.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And what did you leave out? Did you have to leave anything out that you thought was too risque that you can talk about?
There was this kind of funny thing about, I think that Korpiklani is quite a lot about alcohol. Like, a lot of their songs are about drinking,
Beer.
and they were really worried about that I don't film too much of them being drunk. And that was kind of like, there was a really funny video we were having. I was filming and we were having this discussion. How is this kind of like? But that was, there was a bit kind of like, of course, you would have it anyway. You kind of like, it's not about, and the Russia was so hectic that you couldn't really go crazy there because you would be left behind. So it wasn't like, but yeah, so it was, there's always with the documentaries, there's always the cleaning part of it that you kind of make it. But I didn't leave anything out that I would kind of like feel that should be there. So
Yeah,
in
so
that
there were
way, yeah.
no hold-ups or disagreements between band members like that
No, I
silly
think
God video.
no. One thing with Korpiklon is that they actually are they're very different people, but they get along very well, and they give each other kind of space. So they don't really have arguments. It is really I think they work very well together. And you have to Russia trip that if you would have a band that would have a lot of problems, you wouldn't survive it because it is hard. It's just it kind of like, and it was even harder for Thomas and me because we wanted to do this extra. Like there's the non-eye people that we want to see, and that
Oh
meant
yeah.
that we didn't sleep for 48 hours. So because we kind of went when the other guys were sleeping, and 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 that was one of the again like one of the great moments that because we started to talk about that there's the Amur River, which there's these ancient kind of petroglyphs and like stuff and Tuomas kind of thought that how can we kind of organize that we can get to see them and he put it on Facebook and then there was Paul who kind of replied and said that I can take you there and there's that's kind of like that could be longer in the film because it's a really brilliant kind of sequence because I'm filming it all where we are waiting in the hotel for the guy to kind of pick us up and we haven't been really sleeping and it's it was minus 27 outside and we were thinking again like old school thinking that a Russian car that survive this that can we get back and all these things and then the guy comes in then we are wondering how much this is going to cost because of course like nobody's doing anything for free and so this guy comes he speaks like maybe a few words of English so it's a lot of kind of like sign language and everything and he said that no it doesn't cost anything this is on me I pay for everything and we were going what and then he had a very nice car no problem and then the Nanai people were absolutely lovely people we had a whole day and they took us with ski-doos to see these petroglyphs by the river and we ate like frozen fish that they just kind of like fish and the fish is frozen and then they hack it with axe and you just kind of like put salt in it and have vodka and it's brilliant and it was absolutely lovely experience and then you again think that like that there's somehow you have to pay for something and then we were leaving with Thomas and I was kind of like it would be nice to have some kind of like memento about this like some souvenir or something and we asked and then that can we buy something and they no we don't have anything to sell so it's kind of like when you realize that our Western system is that nobody does anything for free there's always some kind of like if it's hidden meaning that you do something a favor but you have to pay it back and all this and these people were just happy to see us and that was quite interesting
Yeah,
kind of
it's
put it in perspective that how twisted we are that we cannot do anything without having some kind of way of getting something back so that was lovely.
I thought that was a beautiful part of the film, and I love your sensitivity with that too. I think you treated that beautifully. You got the right balance there. But just to address that point you made there about in the West, we think everybody's there's always going to be some financial exchange, and typically that's the case. Though I mean, look, you travel to Fiji near me here, or Vanuatu, or what have you. You're not going to get away with anything without them charging you an arm and a leg. Let me assure you. And that's what I loved about what you exposed there was we've talked about Russia getting a raw deal from the United States or media in the United States in particular, but it's just, the common narrative across social media if you pay too much attention to it though. But it just brought out that beautiful side to the Russian people and that there is this vast culture there. It's not just a homogenous culture. There's all sorts of different people over there and you're able to bring out the generosity in the people too. And I think that's going to be, it's, for all the reasons that we've already discussed, that's going to be a pleasant surprise for people. But were there any moments in either film, because I know you didn't do anything death-defying or too daring, but were there any moments where you thought for a moment, oh, hang on a sec, things could go pretty south here?
Yes, in Russia there was, yes, because in Russia, dealing with the normal people is fine, but you don't want to get involved with the police or the military, because that actually is where you can actually disappear if you are in Siberia. So we had a moment that, because of course, like, we are in a train that is normal Russian, whatever, Trans-Siberian train. So we are amongst the Russians there, and then of course the band feels that oh, we have to have a little bit drink, and drinking is not allowed in the train. We had this kind of like, there was this, every kind of compartment had a lady who was kind of like the supervisor or whatever, and there was this kind of like, having drinks, and I didn't film it because it was a bit too complicated to film it, because it was already quite tricky situation. So she got really angry, and then she got somebody to translate, and she was saying that okay, that this is not, you cannot do this, and she's calling the police, and they will be picking us up from the next station. And thus, of course, it's quite bad news. And I was kind of thinking that surely there's like something that we can bribe the person or something. And then it turned out that he was also selling, and I bought this. I actually have it here, like a Russian tea cup, which is kind of like a metal frame that you put the glass in, and like old school type of thing. And I bought it for 15 quid, and that solved the problem. After that, she was fine with the guys drinking and everything. So that was, and there was another similar situation that was solved with the same way. But that was also kind of like, for me, that was not cool, because basically, if you go somewhere, you should respect people, and you should respect their culture, you should respect their rules. So in a way, of course, it was out of order to kind of be drinking there. We shouldn't have done that. Well, I didn't drink, I think. I might have had one.
Sneaky
But you know
drink.
what I'm saying. So in a way, if that would have ended badly, it would have been our own fault. But it could have ended quite badly. So, but that's kind of like that. That's in the longer version. There is kind of, because we talk about it the next day. So in the longer version, there is in the film, but it was because there wasn't anything from the evening, because it was, like I said, that of course I could have filmed it, but I still think that you have to kind of keep some kind of limit to what you do, because not every, and there was quite a lot in Russia that if we were in a coffee place and I was filming, they said no cameras, and there was that type of still, like, that the filming was. But then there was like, you might remember, there's the kind of like the old kind of like statue type of thing where there's a couple, and
Okay. Yep.
they're taking pictures of them, and I actually kind of sign language that, is it okay that I film them, and they were just happy. So it's not like, that they Russians don't be filmed. It's just like, that for some reason the businesses are quite worried about the filming, but like this wedding couple and all that, they were all very happy about it, that I was filming them. So, and that's a great thing with, again, like if you would be with a normal big camera, everybody would be aware that you are actually filming. If you are going with an iPhone, then it's just like, a tourist. So it's a very, very good camouflage for professional filmmaker, that you can get really great stuff without people being aware of the camera. And it's like with the audience, that I think that the with the Russia, the audience is so fantastic, and I think it comes hopefully through the film, that how they are so happy, and it's not like fake. It's like they are just like really happy to be there, and you can see it in their face that they are really. And I think that was brilliant. That was one of the great moments in Russia. And in a bizarre way, the Japanese audience was same. They were very, very kind of like excited, and I was expecting that they would be more kind of like, kind of looking and clapping, and you never learn.
I remember that bit in the film, actually. Yeah, that was in Vladivostok from memory, with the young couple in Russia. Was that in? I thought that was in Vladivostok.
I think it was before that.
Never mind. It's on the it's on the film
yes,
anyway
yeah,
for people to
yeah,
see. So,
yes, it
but
is.
it was
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
But I guess it begs a question then, for the length that both are, so 31 minutes and 22 seconds and 39 minutes and 22 seconds, and you would have taken so much footage. What was the editing process like? Did that involve a lot of vodka and Jack Daniels?
No, it's too hard. You cannot drink and edit because it doesn't work that
Hey,
way.
I've tried.
But yeah, no, it with the Russia, there was so much footage, and because I filmed, there was 15 gigs, and I filmed all of them. So sifting all through that and finding the moments, and because the difference between Russia and Japan was that Russia I only had one camera, so whatever was done from that needed to be kind of. Well, what Sophia did was that she actually did this weird kind of collage of songs, with little snippets of things, and which might annoy a lot of people, but I thought it was quite wacky. It was kind of like the way that she edited it was very hectic. So she actually got the feeling of how it was, that it was just kind of like rushed through. And in Japan I had like multiple cameras, so they were more like a multi-camera, but there was only 3 gigs or so. So Japan didn't have that much footage, so editing wasn't really that complicated. It was more with the gigs. It was kind of like I had some sync problems with the cameras and stuff like that, and because when you have like if you leave cameras here and there, you don't want to leave expensive GoPro, so you have like cheaper cameras, and then you have all kind of weird problems with the syncing.
The
They all
cheaper
work,
cameras,
but
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, they don't work as
so
well. Yeah.
no, yeah. Now I have really good kind of mid-price cameras that are kind of all 4K and work perfectly and no problems with syncing. But that was it. With the Japan, it took quite a long time to get everything, and in a way because you can edit in a quick way that you just go and that. But I'm kind of like do it the hard way that I sync all the concerts so that I sync all the cameras, everything, and then I have a look at it. So instead of just picking a moment and then syncing that and using that, I actually have done everything. So it just because that way I know that I have definitely the best parts out of it. Because if you just go and pick and choose things, then and that's of course how the TV station would be editing it, because they would be editing, they have a time schedule, so just go up. So it is, but Russia, yeah, it took sifting through the footage and getting it organized, and it took quite a lot of time. And like I said, that I edited this long version that was almost 3 hours, and Sophia edited it down, and she edited also really hard way because she was doing constantly kind of like effects so that the camera is kind of like stopping, going backwards, and there's all this kind of jerky movements, and which is really really slow editing. So I was quite awed to see what she had done, that she really kind of like went the whole way doing it brilliantly, so that even the long version, it just works, it just goes, but it is kind of people's attention span is so
Sure. Yeah.
so short
Yeah, it's tough.
nowadays that if you have a 2 hour film, it's 2 hours, I'm not going to watch it. So
They're a perfect length, but I'll definitely watch the extended versions because I'm curious and I'm interested. But you had another coincidence in Japan, I think it was, and you caught up with Mila Petroza from Creator. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, you did his video. What album and what
No,
song was
no,
that?
it was Wade. Vader was the
Oh,
we
Vader.
met
Sorry, it was Peter. Wasn't
creator.
it Peter? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
and I know Sami Ylisirnio from the Promised Land of Heavy Metal,
Mhm.
so that was quite funny. But yeah, Vader was really strange because in 1992, Earache hired me to go to Poland to make a video for them, and that was just a year after the Soviet Union collapsed. So the Poland was very different than it's now, and and it was again filmed with 16 mm film camera, so it was quite complicated, and it was I could have made a movie out of that. I would have had the kind of iPhones back then it would have been a brilliant road movie, but because there were so many weird problems and things, and that was one of the rare occasions when I thought that we are not going to get this film done, and we are talking just about the music video,
Mm.
and but we did, and after that I haven't really been in contact with him, so it was really surprising to meet him in Osaka, all the place, and that was 25 years from the previous meeting, so that was.
Yeah, I like Peter a lot, actually. I've had a few conversations with him, and he's always frank and
Yeah.
upfront and very honest and always willing to have a good conversation. And he's in a great band too. And I said to him that I really admired that they they'd survived the fall of the Iron Curtain, so to speak. He downplays that sort of stuff because he doesn't really see
Mm,
it as as the way we do in the West, that they move from
mm,
communism and a socialist society into a capitalist or neo-capitalist society and all of the challenges that come with both, and they've survived both era. They're probably the only band I know. There might be others out
mm.
there, but certainly the most prominent band that's been able to do that. So big respect for them and for Peter. And it was great to see them in your video. Was there any in your documentary? Sorry, was there any other coincidences like that happened across both when you were filming?
No, like in Russia, we met the band of Nytland, which funny enough has a Swedish name, but
Mm.
it's a Siberian band, and that was really nice because they were playing in Omsk, and we have been keeping in contact, and they have been the singer has been in a Sauerkraut song, but she's also working on some of my new music that I've been doing. So that was really great that we met them, and Tuomas has also been working with them. So that was like kind of like that type of nice thing. We really like their music and like them, and we stayed kind of in contact, and now kind of been actually working on projects with them.
Mhm.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Would never have heard about them otherwise. So,
Mm.
but
Fair
the
enough.
way the thing that what's kind of like I don't know how Piotr has been kind of like talking about it, but when in 1992, because I just moved here and I've left kind of like Finland behind, and in Finland I've been doing TV commercials and was kind of like doing quite nicely. And when I went to decided that now it's time to go to London, I didn't know anybody, so it was kind of one of those things that you leave everything behind and you start from zero. And there was at the time there was still kind of that type of I used to do this and I had this and that, that type of looking back and thinking what you have left behind and
Hmm.
whatever. And it was really the way the thing was putting things in perspective because they were trying to get out of, and we had this because they had like handmade guitars and they had Floyd Rose tremolos handmade, and I was kind of like saying that's quite interesting that you have the handmade tremolo, and I said that, well, we only have them because we cannot afford to buy the real Floyd Rose
Mm.
tremolo. So if we buy a real Floyd Rose tremolo, it costs was it like a 2 month salary, and that's kind of same time when I'm kind of complaining that how life, and I have guitars that I had one guitar that had Floyd Rose tremolo, and the guitar was like, I don't know, probably 3,000 pound guitar. And at the same time, I'm complaining. It's a kind of, like you realize I'm a twat, that I should kind of shut up and happy that if I want to move from Finland, I just buy a ticket and fly to London. And that's that. There isn't, but for them, it was kind of like, to go to London for gigs. They could afford to buy air ticket, but they couldn't afford to stay there. That it's just the kind of like, the difference between their income and our income was so humongously big gap that it's just kind of like that they have actually managed to get over that. That's, I think, is something that they should be proud of, and people should know about it. That it's not like, that if a Finnish band gets into touring in Europe and it's great, but to come from that type of background and make it, that's really brilliant. That's kind of hard work and complicated, and also because they were dealing with earache records, and I don't know how much you have heard about earache records, but it's not the nicest record label in the planet, let's put it that way.
Yeah, look, I can assure you there's plenty coming out right now, and I'm Al Dawson, the Australian guy, who looks after earache in the US. You might have had to I know you probably dealt with Digby, but I haven't dealt with them ever directly, but I send some stuff to him on Instagram, and I've spoken to a bunch of artists that have been on earache. So Mike Browning from Nocturnus and Mortis. Mortis is Mortis, so I can't remember his Norwegian name, but they're not fans, to say the least. And they went into some pretty big detail with me about how difficult being on the label was. All of these stories are out there for anybody to listen to on my podcast series, by the way. These aren't discussions that have been had and kept in private, by the way. But and I think Dan Seagrave, the artist who you might be aware of, has recently come out and has been very vocal. And Al has addressed that on his Instagram page about the licensing agreement that they may, or according to Dan, did not enter into, which didn't include things like jigsaw puzzles. You've probably seen the album covers as jigsaw puzzles that are coming out recently and the like. And there's a few things coming out at the moment about old earache, and it sounds like you had a fairly similar experience to the two people that I just mentioned.
It actually kind of ended my work relationship with them, with Maiden, because it was miracle that we got it done for the money, because I think £2,000 at that time, but that included traveling, laboratories, because that wasn't like now it doesn't cost you to go and film, but back then you had to pay laboratories and editing and everything, and I had to pull a lot of favors to be able to make the video. And then I think his name was Digby, the kind of like the manager. He started to, there should be more of the band in the picture. And I said that's all we had, because we had so many troubles, and you had your guy Peter there from Earache who was monitoring. So surely he has told what type of problems he had. And he, no, but I only pay you half. And I remember I was some railway station in London, and I'm very calm usually, and I always think that you have to kind of try. And I said to him that just fuck off, and you will never see this film if you don't pay, and hang up. And then he paid me. But it's just kind of like, it was like, after all it's just so, it was,
Do you
funny moment.
Do you know Jordan Peterson at all, a Canadian academic? Have you been following some of his work? So, just to give you the very brief overview of Jordan's work. Okay, so one of the things that he's talked about in some detail. I saw him when he came here to Brisbane, and he's got his own podcast and the like. But one of the things that he talked about was success is, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'll probably miss out some important points, but this is the gist of it. Success is measured by ethics, meaning that is the great determiner on how successful you're going to be in a corporation or in business. And I've worked for Australia's largest telecommunications company for quite some time, and certainly my experience in there was that people that were a little bit here and there with their ethics and prepared to lie and basically cheat people, they got ahead. This is, there's no biblical tales righteousness and just do the right thing and put your
No.
head down and you'll get ahead, and all those things that my parents told me when I was a kid. Turn up early, be the first person, be the first person there, be the last person to leave. Take 5 minutes less on your lunch break. I did all of that sort of stuff, and I got to be honest with you, it was bad advice, because they might not have. It was bad advice, not by it wasn't their intentions were good, but the execution therefore is bad, because people then take advantage of it, and you end up doing work for other people, and then behind your back they're saying that they've done all of this work when you might have done it all. Or in a business person's case like Digby, or even here on the Gold Coast with some of the people that do business around here that I've crossed swords with over the years in my time as a telecommunications account executive, I don't think they could lie straight in bed, some of these people, but they go to sleep very easily at night. I couldn't do what they do, and from the sounds of things, you couldn't either. It's not in us to do that. I don't know what it is with these people that allows their moral compass to be, in my view, so skewed that they can say to you, you didn't do what I wanted, so therefore I'm going to pay you half.
Why? No, it is, and there's so much of that, well, of course, in music business, yes, it's film business, it's the same, that you have. I think I've been kind of lucky in a way that, because when I've been doing TV commercials, whatever, that I have my own style, and it's not about having a big company with glass windows, silver furniture or whatever. That it has been filtering. That I have had bad experiences, but not as much as some of my friends have. And I think that I've been lucky in a way that to get to me, to ask me to do something, is already filtering the really kind of annoying people away, that they go to some big company. so in a way, but yeah, it is. But I think at the end of the day, I think how I kind of see these things is that you have to be kind of true to yourself. You have to do everything that you need to do, and even if somebody is asshole and if it's wrong and whatever, it doesn't matter, because in the end of the day, if you can look back and say that, well, I did everything right, and I didn't cut the corner, didn't kind of compromise, then it's kind of okay. But it is complicated, because it is, especially with the Finnish culture, there's also very kind of that type of that you have to do things right or God will punish you. And we are not really that religious, but we have this type of kind of if you are happy, something bad will happen. And I think a lot of Finns have to kind of work quite hard to get over. Of course, there's bad Finns who don't have this problem, but I think a lot of good Finns have this problem, that it's kind of limiting you in a way, and it's quite stupid thing, but it is kind of that there is this kind of vengeful God somewhere waiting to strike you, and which is really, it's logically completely, if you look around, usually it is like you said, the people who have very kind of flexible morals are the ones who are furthest, and quite often the people with the very kind of less with less skills get further, because somehow the more people know, the more they are aware what they do, and the more they care about what they do, and in a way it kind of works against them. So in a way, the people who are less skilled, they get further because they kind of just believe that they are brilliant, whereas they are not necessarily. And I think Americans have been making studies about this, that how the kind of level of knowledge and what you think about yourself goes kind of opposite direction.
Correct.
So if you have very little knowledge, then you are kind of thinking that you are like this. So, but it's a bit true. Kind of, I think you have to be philosophical with that it's not perfect and we cannot fix it, and I think that also what I'm quite happy that I don't blame anybody. If I have bad luck or things go wrong, it just happens. And it's my own fault. It's not anybody else's fault. It's not the world's fault. And I think that that's quite important to kind of, if you keep on doing films or music, whatever, is that you realize that it's what you make of it, and it's not that there's somebody against you, or some kind of evil forces stopping you. That's not real. It's everybody has the same obstacles. It's just how you go through them.
I get a bit concerned about humanity's direction because we seem to. I wouldn't say we're on a path for the apocalypse, but if we are, we've done it to ourselves. And I think it all starts with the thieves and the liars and the people that are trying to rip people off, because there's just no need for it. I'm not saying that I'm angelic by any means, but I can tell you, mate, I can't throw one of my daughter's lolly wrappers out the window when we're driving along in the car because I feel too guilty about it for days afterwards if it's even blown out. But other people they don't seem to have an issue misrepresenting and slandering and just getting ahead by any means necessary. People in the legal profession particularly, I think, do that because we've seen too many examples of lawyers in Australia, in the United States, no doubt in Finland, but definitely in the UK as well. It's if you've got a legal case pending and it's before a jury, well, you better have a bloody good lawyer, because if the other side, even if you're completely innocent and you've definitely done nothing wrong, it's whoever argues the best case. And I understand that's just the best of the mechanisms that we could sort of invent to determine someone's guilt or not, but it really, a lot of factors they hinge on whether or not the person that is defending you is, just say you have done something wrong, like just for example, there's a rapist out there or something and they've got a bloody good lawyer and they get off. I know there's nothing we can do about it, but we know that it does happen as well. And, like you've, from the sounds of things, you've got a family and I definitely do. And you just, I say a prayer to Lord Krishna every night. I say that just there, but for the grace of God, whatever challenges my kids face, let them be challenges that they can rise to and not be broken by for the rest of their lives. I know I'm not asking for an expressly easy life for anybody in my family, but just nothing that's going to come. Just please don't let anything come along which is going to break them, because I know people that are broken because some people just don't get put back together, whether it be a separation or a financial situation, or it's usually a separation like a divorce. Certainly at my age now, people around me, a few have gone through it, and it's taken them years to recover, for example. It's all part of the human experience in summary, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is, of course, one of these things that is quite complicated is that some people, it's about also how you see the world, is that I think that I kind of, whatever happens to me, I kind of see it as a learning experience. And whereas there's a lot of people that there's the first hiccup on the road and they, oh no, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
It will not work. And they give up. So I think they are the people who will have the roughest ride in the world, because you have to be just able to brush it off. Like, that if you have setbacks, and I'm not talking about now like somebody dying or something. I'm talking about like in the work and in your normal life, that you just have to kind of try to rise above whatever it is and just continue and not give up. And because it is like, especially if you make music or film, it's full of setbacks and problems and then occasionally you have good breaks, and that's really great. But it is, I think that's the kind of like, that. But I don't. It's quite like with all this Corona and everything, that the world will be different now. It won't go back to the same. So
great, yeah.
And at least when it started here, it actually was quite surprising, because you would be expecting like all kind of problems and youngsters going wild and whatever. But people are actually, at least where we live, everybody was really nice. And there was that type of kind of like, of course, Brits are always polite anyway, but there was that overly politeness, that everybody was kind of like more caring in a bizarre way.
Yeah.
And that was actually quite like something that you think, wow, this is brilliant. If this type of thing actually makes people think about things and makes them nicer. That's very good, but I don't know if it's a long-term thing. It's to be seen, and I think for a lot of people, it's probably been quite like, because they have had to value their whole world again.
Yeah.
Like, that their work is not necessary forever, and what their plans are not forever, that they have to actually maybe realize more that this moment is what you have, and you have to kind of embrace it, and because you don't know what happens tomorrow. And I think that this is one of the things that if you are kind of self-employed or in kind of film or whatever, that's how you live anyway, because you don't know what's happening in a month's time or year's time. You hope that your plans are going ahead, but there might be a different plan. And it seems to be that when I plan something for long term, it never happens that way. There's suddenly something else coming, and I go somewhere else, and which is fine for me. I find it like exciting, because it's not. I find it very hard to work in a job that would be the same job for the next 20 years. You know what I'm saying? That I like the change and the challenge, but I know not a lot of people are like that. But it is, yes, we are living in an interesting time.
Yeah, no, I agree, and sentiments are shared insofar as I've seen something similar happen here in southeast Queensland in Australia, where I think people are giving people a little bit more space, but I'm also seeing the boredom creep in now. So at night, you hear the kids doing the donuts in their cars, we call them. You hear that every night at the moment. And when I drive the kids to school, because we live in a semi-rural area, but it's near enough to the big city area, that they drive down. They drive down here around the cane fields, just over here, and that's just whoa! You just hear it again and again and again. And I was only a couple of weeks ago that, and I was a journalist covering it for the Gold Coast Bulletin, that 3 kids died going alleged, better use that term, an alleged 150 kilometres an hour in a road where you do not go that fast. And they're in a Subaru, a Liberty, so all-wheel drive, which, as you're aware, like those things will stick, but they're very forgiving. Once you lose traction, you're out. They're not like rear-wheel drive cars where you can sort of regain control. Once you're out of control, that's it, and that's what happens. So if any of these kids think that they're not going to end up wrapped around a telegraph pole, well, I saw the footage. I saw the video of these kids that were killed. They were dying, so it does happen, but sorry, just to round on the point again and not to get too morbid. I agree. I just think that it won't, as things were in when did this thing kick off? In early March this year? The COVID thing? Mid-March. I don't think like what life was like beforehand. I don't think we're going back to that, because I know in Australia our economy is contracted and there isn't the economic opportunity there anymore, and people are putting their pennies away. They're not going out for entertainment and getting drunk every Friday and Saturday night and buying that. I don't think people are going to buy that new car every 3 years, which people have this obsession with in Australia, which I'm so glad is going to stop, because people get into unnecessary debt, which then puts all this other pressure on themselves. And to your exact point about being in a job that you don't like for 20 years, I can't tell you how many people I know that are in jobs they hate. And they wish that they could do what you and I are doing, but they're not in a position where they can leave their job because of school fees, mortgages, car payments, and all of these other outgoings that are putting all of this pressure on them to stay in a job that they hate. And then, of course, what's the flow-on effect from that? Depression or divorce or both. And it's the quick fixes, and it doesn't. And you and I, and you spoke very eloquently there, that you can plan for years in advance, but oftentimes it just won't work out. It's just not how the world works, and the universe provides opportunities. You've got to be nimble enough to take advantage of opportunities when they arise. And I think if more people were able to do that, they'd be happier. But they've sort of bought into what I call the big con, which is the consumer lifestyle. And I think a lot of these young kids these days, these 15 to 24-year-olds or 18 to 24-year-olds, I suppose, they're so against capitalism, but they don't understand that going towards socialism will result in, well, everywhere it's been implemented, it's resulted in just millions of people dying, so you can't go that far over there. It's just work on fixing this system here. And I think the best fix is just to get people to be less consumer focused. Stop buying shit they don't need and can't afford, and stop that repetition and that cycle. Because living in countries like the UK or Finland or Australia or New Zealand, Canada, the United States, France or Germany, life really doesn't get any better globally than in those countries. It's literally the best that humanity offers in terms of opportunities. So make the most of it, and don't put yourself in a spot of bother.
No, I think even if we kind of get over this, I don't know when, but I think that the ramifications of this will go on for a very long time, and I think that like here now the furlough scheme is kind of, they are wrapping that down, and that will mean that there's a lot of people going to be unemployed after that, and of course the big corporations are using this as an excuse to streamline their system, and what you can notice is that the customer service has gone bad, because now they can say, oh, it's because COVID, we don't have people here. And it's just kind of like, so you know that the big business is trying to figure out how to make more money out of this. So it is kind of like, complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated.
And of course, if we think about the music and all the kind of live events and things that of course they have plans for next summer for the big festivals and things, but if we have a second wave coming, it's just kind of like, it might be that the kind of like the big events are gone after this. It might be that we are kind of downsizing the events, and maybe we won't see Metallica playing ever again. But
I wouldn't mind that, to be honest with you, if they just retired and disappeared and left. I think Rob Trujillo is a tremendous bass player. I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but I can't stand Metallica and the rest of the guys in that band, especially after they did that ridiculous video back in 2003. Did you watch that video, that Some Kind of Monster, I think, video? Is that what it was called? You know, that Day in the Life of Metallica thing they did where they were complaining about...
Oh, no, I haven't seen... No, I've heard about it. Everybody always says that you should watch it. That
it's a disaster.
Funny.
Yeah, it's hilarious for all of the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Kirk Hammett walking around his ranch, for God's sakes. I mean, these are guys that are in the top 1% of the top 1% of the population in terms of their income and their capacity to earn money, and yet they're carrying on like a bunch of school kids. What's that?
Oh,
you hear me?
Go into the second. Hello. Yes, it switched back into this.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, gotcha. They turned back on again, did they? They charged.
Yeah, I put them on the charger, so let's see how long they work. Yeah.
But I look at...
it is. Yeah.
I know that the guys at Metallica have a charity and this sort of stuff, but just about anybody of prominence has to have that, lest they be accused of being greedy and mean. So, but I feel for poor Jason Newsted. God, I've talked a lot about this recently on the podcast series. I spoke to Steve DiGiorgio, who, Steve DiGiorgio from Death, Controlled and all those great bands. Tremendous fellow, by the way. And he was encouraged by Zetro Souza. Was it Zetro? So Paul Baloff, the singer from Exodus at the time, to apply for the vacant Metallica bass playing role back in 1986. And he's really glad he didn't go for it, because he heard the stories that were coming out back then about the way they were treating bass players. And there's something toxic in that band. And I to be honest, I loved Master of Puppets, but back then, like within the 10 years after it first came out, 1991 or 1992 and that day, and I haven't really listened to a lot since then at all. Actually, I don't even think I've listened to it at all since then, but I moved on to heavier things, and other bands. But their success, I don't understand their success at all, because they've got effectively two good albums and the rest is pretty shit, to be honest.
Well, I think it is the Black Album that is a very good album, and it's very commercial. So I think that their success is that they have been so long time on the road, and they have fans who are 15 and fans who are 65.
Yeah.
So they have this humongous audience, and like I remember when the Saint Anger came out. Remember that album, which was, I think I said before that I said I'm never going to buy any Metallica because remember how they killed Napster. It was the first kind of like free music, like kind of like Spotify type of thing,
Yeah, I
very long
remember.
time
Yeah.
ago.
I,
And
I used to use it.
Metallica kind of
I was probably
yes,
in
and
his dossier
Metallica
of
went
people
and
that were
killed them.
downloading it.
Yes, but Metallica went because it's illegal, and they actually started from illegal tape exchange.
Hmm.
They were kind of like supporting bands to kind of change tapes and all that. So from that beginning to kind of go against it, I think that was just for me it was like. But then I had to buy the same Anger because there was the video DVD with it, which
I
actually
remember
was
that.
from
Yeah.
the rehearsal,
Yeah.
and that was actually much better than the album
Agreed. We're on the
because the
same
album
wavelength
had the
about
kind
this.
of
Yeah.
because the album had the kind of what everybody's still making jokes about the snare drum, which was kind of boing boing boing, and the rehearsal thing didn't have that, so it sounded much better. So, but yeah, no, it's yeah, I've not been a big fan, but I can
Yeah.
understand that they appeal to so large audience that none of the other bands does it. Iron Maiden kind of probably comes close, and Judas Priest might be there, and Megadeth is, I don't know, they are probably quite
Yeah,
big also.
couple
But
yeah. I think
yeah,
to your point, Metallica. I spoke to Steve about this. Metallica, I think, are the biggest band of all time. You see it everywhere you go. Almost, I wouldn't
mm,
say every single time, but every week here in Brisbane and on the Gold Coast, I'll see a Metallica
mm,
t-shirt. That'll be the only band t-shirt I see. I might see an 8-year-old
mm,
kid wearing a Nirvana t-shirt, but they'll have no idea who the band are. They've just bought it from
yeah,
Kmart or Big W or what have you. Um,
yeah,
but definitely Metallica, and I think Iron Maiden are like, if Metallica are up here, Iron Maiden are down here, sort of thing. They're just not. I think Rod Smallwood's done a great job for them, by the way, and Metallica and Iron Maiden. I
mm,
think, except for when they brought Blaze Bayley into the band, I think they did the wrong thing then. The wrong singer, and
mm,
very bad time for them. They should have just gone on hiatus or something like that because they're too. They're well,
mm,
what the X Factor I thought was okay, but that Virtual 11 is on par in terms of unlistenability as Sananga, as far as I'm
mm,
concerned. Plenty will disagree with me, but I remember getting it
mm,
the day it came out. I'm that big a Maiden fan. Not anymore, I'm not,
yeah,
but I'm sort of over it, to be honest with you. But back then, I was right into them, and I thought, what? I think I listened to it half of once. I think I skipped through the tracks, and then that was it. Never listened to it again. It just couldn't be done. Didn't have any redeeming qualities. But then there's Judas Priest beneath them, I think, and then you start talking about the Megadeths and stuff. But the point that I raise to people all the time, and I haven't, I, because I feel like I'm in it. I've got skin in the game here because I'm talking to so many new artists a lot of the time. When I say new artists, relatively new
mm,
artists like the Corpaclanis of the world, it's so much more
mm,
exciting to discover new music. Okay, definitely
mm, yeah,
support the old bands. There's no, not saying don't do that, but don't just make them your one metal band that you listen to. And I think that's what Metallica are. They're the one metal band some people listen to. They don't branch out into anything else. And unless it sounds like Metallica, which is
mm,
what Creed did, they had that. Mark Tremonti is a great guitarist, by the way, but they had that. They almost had that Metallica crunch from the Black Album sort of sound, bit differently done. But you know where I'm headed. It was in the same vein.
mm,
They sort of tapped into that same audience, and I just try to evangelize heavy metal and extreme metal and say, my view ultimately is that for every person living, there's at least one extreme metal band that they can get into. And I'll put Corpaclani
mm,
into anything with that gruff vocal that Corpaclani have got
mm,
through some of their songs. I often
mm,
say that there's always going to be an extreme metal band out there for somebody. It's a bit like saying, some people who say, I hate Indian food, for example, because it's too hot.
yeah,
Well, there's plenty of Indian dishes out there that aren't hot. So give them a try.
mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. And metal is quite like body is metal, and this is the kind of the promised land of heavy metal. We're trying to figure that out because metal for me is quite different than for a lot of the younger people, and and in a way it's become so generic word, and but yet it is kind of like that if you say that here that that Korpiklan is a metal band, a folk metal band. A lot of people are not going to listen to them because the metal is a curse word. In Finland, it's kind of like means kind of like it's a great thing, but like here, it still is not best-selling thing. So in a way, which is funny because like you have like metal, like let's say Nightwish, which is kind of like, is it metal? Not necessarily to me, but it's seen as a metal band. But that could actually work against them because they actually are much more kind of like wide audience music. So it is, yeah. It's the whole labeling thing is very complicated.
Yeah, the labeling thing. I see both sides of the coin on this one here. I understand that artists don't like being categorized, but it's an easy way to get your music out there to say that you're a symphonic metal band, and that's what Nightwish are, and Morbid Angel are a death metal band, and Carcass are a grind band, and all this sort of stuff. Because some fans, God, I'd even venture to suggest a majority of fans still think in those ways, But then it does. You're right. It does sort of limit their commercial reach, but it's just the best of a bad system, I think. And I've shared a lot of music that I've gotten over the years with people. I have it on around the house. I mainly listen to jazz and classical, to be honest with you. It's not for any other reason that's the music in my old age at 42 that I'm starting to get into. But privately on my these earpods here and in the car, I listen to just about all extreme and heavy metal, and mainly for the purposes of conducting interviews, so as I can do research and listen to it, so I'm informed or having conversations with people, and I'm constantly hearing new and great stuff that I think really, really could get out there. And it doesn't even have to have that commercial sound like we're talking about with Metallica or Creed or any of those bands. It's just music that I think could appeal to a broader audience. But for all I know, a lot of this stuff that I get sent from Earsplit PR and well, Tara doesn't send me any music. She gives me opportunities with people, or Taria, I think, she shares, like, I get a lot of stuff, but I'm thinking that a lot of this stuff's only going to get a couple of hundred downloads or, 1,000 listens on Spotify or something. And there was an excellent post by a band the other day. I'll give them a shout out, actually. I think it was Amber Down. They're a band in Perth, but they had a meme, the memes, and it was a photo of something like this kid crying. And it was that the feeling you get when you've spent 6 months working on an album only for someone to listen to half a song of the entire album on their iPhone before switching it off and never listening to it again, that sort of thing. And I think that is the issue that faces a lot of artists, because the internet has democratized the record industry, meaning anybody can release anything these days. But who's going to listen to anything? It's very hard to sort of sift through it all. And the record companies like Digby and Al at Earache, they're not really the gatekeepers. Well, they're definitely not the gatekeepers anymore. Consumers will listen to whatever they feel like listening to, which is why having a social media presence is so important. But then that brings up how much energy and time do you want to spend in social media, because that's a dark art in itself as well. So it sort of comes full circle again, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it is. Yes, because it's in a way, it's always been that the marketing is important, but I think nowadays the marketing is just taking over the whole thing, that the actual product is not really, I mean, product like, your album or whatever.
I know what you're saying, yeah.
Important anymore at all. And that's kind of, there should be, well, like how all the big musical magazines work, that music magazines work, that to get like your band featured does mean that there has to be exchange of money, that there isn't anymore that they would just pick up something. Oh, this is a great band. If the great band doesn't have a backing, they're never going to be found. There isn't that type of that some big magazine would just like, suddenly that you have to listen to this. This is great. That you might get that through other bands, that you have some bigger name band listens to your stuff and they mention that, hey, this is a really cool band. And that is probably the biggest lift that the band can ever get, is the endorsement from a bigger band that you can kind of like advertise. You can do all kind of things, but it doesn't really necessarily even change anything. But you have to have a hell of a lot of money to actually push something through the system so that it's forced into people. And I don't know how that even works anymore. I think that's the kind of like that type of creating. I don't know if it works anymore.
You've just got to have a very savvy internet presence and an even better engagement on social media. I can tell you, that's the only two facts that I know. How to do that, no idea, honestly. And I'm someone who studied it at uni. It's
luck, yes.
It
is the luck that you have to be doing the right thing at the right time. Nobody knows why, and then just suddenly like goes like, and you would
think about
have a really great band.
But think about this in heavy metal, and I might be wrong here. Correct me if you think I am. But outside of Ghost, there have been no new bands that have got to headliner status the last 15 years.
So there was a bit, you said headline who?
So
Ghost was breaking up the...
You're right. Ghost are the only headline band to emerge in the last 15 years. And when I say headline band, they're the only band that can finish a festival like an Iron Maiden or a Metallica could. If you know what I'm saying when I say that. Heaps of bands have come out, but they're the only one that's graduated to headliner status. And there's something in that. That tells us something. And if you think there's been another band, please tell me, because I've thought long and hard about this. And Rammstein came out in the late 90s, so they don't count because they came out before the internet revolution. But post-internet revolution, I'd even say 20 years at this point in time. You know, bands like The Killers and stuff, they're not metal, so they don't count. I know they headline Glastonbury and all that sort of stuff, but that's very different to headlining Wacken and Download. But who did we have here in Australia? Korn. Korn headlined, I think the last Download, was it? It wasn't cancelled, was it? I don't think so. No, I think Korn was, God, I'm just going by memory here. I certainly, because I did a review of the 2018 one here in Australia, and I think it was Korn and Good Charlotte. Really? Yeah. I mean, holy shit. And those, the Rage Against the Machine, Prophets of Rage too. All of those bands have their roots. Good Charlotte, I think, is late 90s, but Rage Against the Machine and Korn are early 90s. I think Rage Against the Machine might even be late 80s, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken on that point.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah. No,
but you see my point.
Yes, and I think there was a talk about it that when the kind of like, you know, big names retire, you know, all the kind of Slayers, and I think Slayer is retired now, isn't it?
I think you're right, but God, it's a little ambiguous. But yeah, I think that they've retired. I think there was some minor chatter there for a period of time there, just from some people that I know, that the band might have kept on going in a studio capacity. But I think that's been knocked on the head. Yeah. I'm not saying that was a fact, by the way, anybody out there listening. But I think Kerry King is adamant in continuing. It just won't be Slayer. It'll just be another band name with possibly everybody except for Tom Araya in the band.
Yeah, but it is kind of like if they kind of like, you know, Metallicas and all these bands stop, it might kill all the big festivals because there wouldn't be anybody to replace them to pull the same amount of people in, which is quite interesting because you have a lot of big names, but they still don't have the same pulling power. So that was quite interesting. I don't remember where I read about it, but it was quite well justified that like how the European festivals are relying on few big names.
I'd never thought about it that way, but there might be some truth to that. But to be honest with you, and look, I'm not in a band, obviously. I'm but a mere mortal. I am in a band, but not one of those bands. But I don't think that'd necessarily be a bad thing in some ways. I'm not trying to do anybody out of a gig, that's for sure. But I see. To me, I'd rather watch Corrosion of Conformity at a venue that holds 200 people. That's perfect for me. I love that. And then meeting, because I get to go on in this doing what I do here. I get to go and catch up with the guys. You know, awesome. I've met all of these guys, and you have too. You know, you've toured with all of these guys, and to a person, I can tell you, all of them have been fantastic. Guys in Metal Church, Corrosion of Conformity, Rings of Saturn, great, all great, fantastic guys, and really easy to talk to. And sometimes they've just got off stage.
and it is kind of like because we have Brighton, the next kind of bigger place
Oh yeah,
from us, and so you get quite a lot of bands there, I met some time ago like Meshuggah, the Swedish
oh yeah, yeah.
band, and really lovely guys, and had a really long chat, and that's unfortunately one of those that I lost the video because some it was on some hard I raised, which is really annoying because it was really brilliant long discussion about they're kind of like the next generation metal from me, so but they were already still like old school, so it was quite interesting discussion about because they are a metal band, but they admit that of course there's the young guys can outplay them.
Oh,
But
Meshuggah, my
is that
God,
enough?
I doubt it.
Yes.
But that's that. If they're saying that, so be it.
Well,
But my God,
yeah, you have kind of like young kids who are like, pooh, but it's just because Meshuggah is Meshuggah. They created their sound, and it's the whole. It's kind of like they're a bit in their own world.
well, they invented a
Also, maybe.
genre. The whole gent thing
Yeah.
comes from them. Real, I mean, again, people will probably disagree, or I don't see how they can. But they invented that whole thing. I remember when they were coming through, and when Chaos Fear first came out. I know that's their third album or what have you, but I remember when that came out and thinking, the game's changed. These guys have changed it considerably because there was the Fear
Yeah.
Factory thing that was a bit, to be honest. But Meshuggah were like, my God, and you could see other, and because I'm a musician, I saw a lot of other musicians around me go, I want to drum like Thomas Harkey or what have you. You could see that shift happen very quickly. And of course, it's, bands like Periphery and Animals and Leaders have sort of taken the torch and have continued on. And Tool are another big band as well. I understand. There's some stuff out there. This is all on public record if anybody wants to research it, but there's stuff out there about Maynard that's a bit unsavory. You can check that out for yourself. But I understand the musicians, and I understand Thomas is not, Thomas. Maynard's not a bad guy either, but I know the other three guys in that band are tremendous guys as well. And they've basically invented their own genre as well, given how many bands copy them, but the guys in Tool just seem to do music as a hobby at this point in time. It doesn't seem to be the main attraction for them. Maynard with his vineyards and his cafes and sommelier or whatever it's called, where he serves people wine. It just seems to be a hobby, and that's always been my view on music, is that, and especially here in Australia, it's probably similar in Finland, I suppose, but you've got no hope of retaining a global audience in Australia. You just don't. We're too far away from everything to do regular tours. And until people are glued on devices, then that might shift things for artists in Australia. But outside of last big band that we really had was In Excess, I think, if I'm not mistaken. In Excess and AC/DC, and it's probably, Finland's famous for its killer heavy metal. It's great heavy metal there with Nightwish and Korpiklani and Lord. And every country seems to have its own thing.
I think, Nightwish is in the kind of like on they are probably the highest level of fame, and I don't, the rest, I don't know how. I think they have to work hard to maintain where they are, meaning that they don't have like excessive bank account somewhere or anything. So
a trust fund,
I think
them,
so it's a bit kind of, but I think that's also like with all the kind of, we have the time when we had supermodels, and then that was the period of time. Then we just have a lot of famous models, but they are not supermodels anymore. And so I think that it's the kind of 80s bands, all these that we've been talking about, that they lived a kind of like a time that is not going to be again. There is not going to be similar type of successes anymore. There's bands that are successful, but they're not going to make same ridiculous amount of money that they are. They might be doing well, but it's not going to be. That was a golden era of those type of bands, and that's kind of gone. And now we are living, and of course, now it might be that we don't have big festivals ahead of us. It might be that they are downsized into something more compact because what this virus is doing and how it's changing everything.
Yeah.
So
I welcome it. So that part of it I welcome, Yeah.
But it is quite interesting. Yeah.
All right, I better wrap things up, mate. But look, I can see I've truly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for being prepared to go
no,
there.
it's very nice. Yeah.
So look, if you're comfortable with everything we've spoken about, I certainly am. I'll put a bit of an edit together, and I'll just release it as both a podcast. And are you happy for me to put it on YouTube as well?
I don't mind. I don't think I have said anything that I would regret.
No, you haven't.
Yeah.
No. Hey, look,
No,
let me tell you this. The times that I know for a fact I've said absolutely nothing that should offend anybody, they're the moments people get in touch with you and go, "You said this." But the other moments where we're talking about it and I've done it a lot, believe me, where I've talked about American politics and identity politics and Trump and all the rest of it, not a word.
Yeah. No, it is right. Yeah.
Not a word. So what I'll do is I'll put the video is out, so I'll find. I know Tari has already sent through everything, so I'll just put everything in links on the front, like the intro, so people can just enjoy the conversation and you can have the promotional side of things up front. And I'll try and get it out this week, but it probably more likely will be next week if that's okay.
Yeah. And if you're on Facebook or something, we could kind of exchange friend things. Or
yeah, I'll look you up. Yeah, when I get off here, I'll find you. Yeah, you're not hidden or anything.
What we didn't talk about was that I have a new album coming out and a new film coming out. So there might be more to talk about.
When's that coming out?
Well, I'm working on it, and it's because I don't know how much you know about me, but I had a band called Sarcophagus, which was the first Scandinavian metal band, and we basically did kind of metal in the 1980s, the music that you could say that is metal. So we were a bit, it was dark.
Yeah. I should have done more research, but I'll explain why I did.
Yeah, no.
What happens is
we can talk another time.
I'll tell you what. I'll share this with you quickly. I've done plenty of interviews, and what I tend to do is I go so broad, we end up not talking about the thing that we've initiated the conversation about. So if I found that out about you, believe me, we would be here for 5 hours or something like that, because to me, Scandinavia is the epicenter of the best heavy metal ever created.
Yeah.
And
well, you can check out the Promised Heavy Metal, the film, and check that out. And Sarcophagus, it's spelled with the F instead of PH.
Okay.
So that's and basically what I'm doing now is different. So the Sarcophagus will be dead. It will be buried. It has been going since '78. So I'm doing slightly different type of different type of music.
78. So you predate.
But it's still metal, but it's different.
Yeah, but even the name though suggests it's a metal band, and Possess came out in 83, or something like that. So you're a full 5 years before Possess. So was it like an extreme? Was it elements of extreme metal in it, or was it?
The first album was quite like mixture of blues and rock and progressive and kind of hard rock and whatever. But then the second album was already kind of like the music structure was metal, and the third album is kind of like, because it was quite unique, because I decided that I cannot make a brilliant album if I use session musicians to replace some of the band members. So it's actually kind of like a very early strange metal album, because it actually has professional musicians playing with me, and there's 3 singers in it, 1 lady and 2 guys, and that album is, because I kind of mastered it again, and it actually sounds still very heavy. It's very, and there's the riffs and things are very kind of, because like at the time, like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, to me they sounded happy. So I think my music didn't sound happy. So I think it was more kind of like in the metal. What I'm saying, that before it was heavy rock. I think that the transition is there.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. I had a chat to Michael Schenker the other night, and we were talking about. I had a really long chat to him before, but I was part of the listening party for his new album, and he's a bloke who I think changed the course of heavy metal, but he doesn't I think he sort of sees it that way a little bit, but you are somebody as well from the sounds of things. And I feel stupid, to be honest with you, for not knowing that about you, because I do
But
so
like
much.
I said, we can talk again about if you look at the promised land of heavy metal, and then we can talk about the next film that we are working on and the music. So
yeah, let's keep this dialogue
kind of
going.
like,
I enjoy talking to you, mate. I think you raise a lot of good points, and
nice. Yes.
you know, I mean, because what I'd like to do is create. I mean, social media, it's got to be done if we want to get anywhere. You just have to do it, but it is about creating community, and I tend to find the people that like interact with me. A lot of them are South American, and like from Brazil, and there's and one fellow in particular is in the UK there, but he's Brazilian, and they're the ones that are, and they're great fans, and so I'm really sort of trying to maybe leverage. I mean, I can't speak Spanish, that's a problem, but I know there's all these markets out there. I'm just trying to sort of think outside the square is my point, and build a community that way. And I think with people like yourself, because this is a genuinely interesting conversation for people to listen to. This is something which they can put on in the background, and I can see how long people listen to things for on Wooshka, which hosted my podcast, and where they're not precisely where they are, but what city they're in and how long they've listened for. And a lot of my stuff, well over half of my stuff, which is a good average, by the way, people listen to the whole thing, not just 5 minutes and then skip to the next episode in 5 minutes, etc. You know, so you're a good guy to have as a contact for continuing to have a conversation with for both of us, I think. So I'd appreciate it, man. Like anytime you got anything new or what have you, let me know, because I love talking to you. So
no, it is kind of, I'm still at the end of the Korpiklani documentary, because there's the promotion and all, but it's all kind of winding down. So then it's kind of picking up these.
Nice. Good stuff. Yeah, I got mine at the back there. We see it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my Music Man basses. Yeah. So I play in covers bands. It's the only way you can have a gig in Australia is by playing covers. If you play originals, nobody gives a shit. You know, you're playing to like your friends and family.
It's the same here. That it is kind of the unfortunate, because Britain is really bad with it. There's not a lot of venues. It's the pubs. So.
Yeah, it's the same here. Well, Australia and we don't like to admit it, but Australia and England are virtually the same. We come from them, and in terms of our society and our culture is built on the English influence, and so it's all pubs for us as well, or leagues clubs or RSL clubs. Thank God for them, to be honest with you, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have places to play. Even though I don't like going into them I won't go into them voluntarily, because there's the pokey machines. They're all the way through them, and it's a bit depressing, to be honest with you, because you see the same people that you were in there 6 months late. You went there 6 months early, and then you go back 6 months later, and the same people are in there, and they're just drinking and pissing their money away. And I hope for more than that for people, to be honest with you. I don't look, lead your life, do whatever you got to do to get through to the end of each day, provided you're not hurting anybody. But I just hope for more than that for people. But mate, look, I'll wrap things up. Thanks so much. I'll put it out. Okay. Thank you so much for listening to and for watching the Scars and Guitars podcast series. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith. The interview subject you just heard from, Kimmo Kuusniemi. Thanks so much for tuning in.